Chapter 1, The Knowledge. Madge the cow. How would I describe her in a word? Well, young. That was her, plain and simple. Too young to go through what she did, poor thing. Eddie the dog. Gosh, I'd have to say kind. She was really kind. And sweet, too. That's 2 words, isn't it? May I use 2 words? Because I would have to say she was both really kind and really sweet and beautiful, too. Oh, heck, that just came out. Can we cut that part, please? Everyone's going to be razzing me for that. Greta the cow. In one word, tragic. Yes, tragic is a good word. Norma the cow. Pass. What? Oh, for heaven's sakes, no, pass is not my word to describe her. I meant that I was not taking part in this silly interview. She's gone. Out of sight, out of mind, I say. Roy the horse. I reckon I'd have to say plucky. She was a pretty little thing, but underneath that soft hide was one brave gal. Buster the pig. Obviously the word would be vaca. Why? Because that's Latin for cow. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I hope you brought along some harder questions. Audrey. How would I briefly describe myself? I'm afraid I am not a cow of few words. Mother once said that my heart speaks a mile a minute, by which she meant that emotions can get the best of me. And then I'm off to the races, conversation-wise. It was her suggestion that I practice distilling my feelings into fewer words. But as to your question, how can you describe anyone, really? The inside and outside can be so different. Here's a poem I composed a while back near Artificial Lake, around the time of my awakening. It goes like this. The cow that I spied was silent and still, her smile serene, her mood tranquil. Oh, to be shy without worry or fear, empty of dread and full of good cheer. Familiar she seemed, and on closer inspection, it was me that I spied in the water's reflection. So you never really know, do you? But I think that if I was to choose just one word to describe myself, that word would be alive. Yes, alive. You see, I knew exactly where I was, and I knew exactly where I was heading, which was downhill, straight to the meat section of the supermarket. And that wasn't acceptable to me. I mean, I had dreams. I wanted to go places other than to the meat section of the supermarket. I wanted to taste new grasses and flowers and see a million sunrises and sunsets. I had no time for cows who said, Audrey, this is your lot in life. Accept it and make the best of it. I couldn't give up on life so soon. Glenn, excuse me, the human. Again? It seems the interest in Audrey won't ever settle down. What more can I tell you, folks? The truth is that this whole media hullabaloo is embarrassing. Bittersweet Farm has been in my family for 4 generations. We're not particularly big. We're certainly no factory farm. We have a variety of animals, but cows are a part of the business. Audrey was born here. As far as I know and understand cows, I would not say that Audrey was special, but I will admit she was memorable. I'd often have to send my older dog Max out to the far end of the property to bring her back to the barn, but I didn't discover any half-dug tunnels under the fence like they're saying on television. That just didn't happen. As for what did happen, I have no comment. Look, we brought her mother onto the farm as an experiment, a new breed we were trying out. Maybe it didn't take. Maybe that was what made Audrey do what she did. Not to sound corny, but I always felt that we all got along on Bittersweet Farm, all of us. There were no hints that something was amiss. Audrey. My breed? Why, I'd be happy to tell you I'm a Charlet. It kind of rhymes with parler, which is how you would say to speak if you said it in French. France is where my roots are, in the town of Gerald, which is in the middle of the country. I know all this partly from Mother, but also from little girl Elspeth, who was showing off to her city cousin. She had a book in her hand, and she was pointing to a map, and I was spying over her shoulders. That's how I learned about the land of my ancestors. That's also where I learned about the giant lake called Atlantic that separates Bittersweet Farm from France, and that brought my dream of travel to a halt. You see, I wanted to visit Gerald and partake of the local food. Little girl Elspeth showed pictures in her book of French Charlet, my cousins, I suppose. They were standing in fields grazing on flowers that I did not recognize. They looked delicious. The flowers, I mean. Elspeth. Audrey, she was my favorite. I could talk to her. I could, you know. Audrey was always nice. She would listen. I think she was special. Audrey. We Charlet, you will note, are all white, but creamy white would be much more accurate. We don't have those black splotches that you find on similar-looking white breeds. Norma says the black splotches give her character and uniqueness. She says it makes her interesting, implying that Charlet are not. But Mother said that Charlet came into the world as blank canvases, and our potential is unknown at first. Mother said that my character would be painted on the inside. I like that. Whenever I experience something that makes me happy, if I hear a robin singing just before dawn, or if I inhale the scent of grass just after a rainfall, I imagine that the tickling I feel inside is a paintbrush dabbling on another splotch of my uniqueness. I was strengthened by thoughts like that, especially in the face of what others were telling me, others who were far less generous. For example, the book from which the little girl Elspeth was reading that day said that Charlet are docile by nature, which means we're quiet and easy to control. It means that we're unlikely to cause any trouble. Well, you can decide for yourself how true that observation turned out to be. Norma the cow. Oh, that Audrey, she was born with fancy pants on, that one. What? Yes, I know perfectly well, I said earlier. I'm not senile, and I'm not a dim light bulb like Agnes either. Everyone knows I'm not one to gossip, but if you're going to insist on telling the story, you better have at least one cow who can give you the facts. First time out of the barn, Audrey was talking about going to the farthest fields and tasting this grass or that clover, or maybe talking to a passing fox. Imagine talking to a common thief. I'd been here a lot longer than she had, but I never ventured past the first hill, and why should I? Plenty of grass nearby. Who needs to go farther? That's the kind of reckless behavior that comes from a wild upbringing. Not that I like to judge. I didn't care much for Audrey's mother when she arrived. It wasn't that she was rude, on the contrary. She was very refined, and quietly so, not show-offy, which I naturally wouldn't stand for. Come to think of it, I don't know why we didn't become closer. She was different, do you understand? Her family roots were, well, let's just say she wasn't from around here. For one reason or another, we never spent much time together. She always seemed to be grazing at the opposite end of the field, and with my weak ankles, I just wasn't. Oh, it doesn't matter anyhow. In hindsight, it was all for the best. I certainly couldn't condone her parenting style. Look at how her daughter turned out. Greta. Audrey was a dreamer. It's not a lie. She was too delicate for this harsh world of farm, yeah? I know, for I too was like a delicate daisy. But in time, life will shape you into something stronger and more resilient. It can be painful, yeah, but what choice do we have? Madge, the cow. Greta said, what? My goodness, that cow could spin a tragedy out of a mosquito bite. The only horrible thing to happen to Greta was she once missed the morning milking and didn't get any relief for a few extra hours. There's some truth to what she said. As far as us cows are concerned, our lot in life is decided before we come into the world. And I said exactly that to Audrey when the time came. I said to the girl, Audrey, there are but 3 kinds of cows. There are milk cows like me, there are work cows like old Betty, and then there are food cows, and I'm afraid that your destiny is to be dinner. It was harsh, I admit, but the poor dear needed to know the facts plain and simple. She heard me, but she wasn't really listening because, well, Audrey was special. And I mean that in a good way, not like how Greta and Norma and all other gossiping ninnies mean it. Audrey reminded me of Lon, my son, whom I miss greatly to this day. They're both made of the same sparkly cloth, if you catch my meaning. Both looking up at the moon and believing it's within their grasp, that anything is within their grasp, if they desired it enough. If you ask me, that's the real tragedy. Cows and steers meant for the dinner table shouldn't be curious or filled with wonder. They should be boring creatures who spend their days looking at the trough or the trail in front of them. Cows and steers meant for the dinner table shouldn't be curious or filled with wonder. They should be boring creatures who spend their days looking at the trough or the tail in front of them. Audrey. Oh, I remember absolutely everything about the day Madge told me that would become of me. I had just composed another poem, this one paying tribute to some delicious clover I had recently discovered on the southern slope of the viewing hill. It went, Clover green, a tasty treat. I'm grateful for each one I eat. I was sharing this poem with my best friend Eddie and telling him about my plans to visit the land of my ancestors and tour the countryside, tasting all the grasses and clover the region had to offer. Eddie was great. He never laughed at my plans, not like most of the cows in the barn. And I did hear them laughing, even though I pretended not to. I knew they thought I was oblivious, but I assure you, I wasn't. I heard all the snickers and Norma's hoof scraping whenever I walked by. But Madge wasn't like that. She wasn't what I would call friendly or anything, but you always knew where you stood with Madge. I heard she'd lost a son, had taken him away from her, and she was just supposed to get over it because it happened all the time on the farm. But I don't think she did, and I don't blame her. I think Madge lost a part of herself, a part of her heart maybe. Don't ask me how I know, because it's not a knowing kind of thing. A mist of sadness is how I'd describe it. Yes, a mist like we get on a gray, foggy morning that made the farm seem as if it were fading away along its edges. That's what it was like with Madge. The sadness hovering around her edges, threatening to fade her away. So I knew Madge was coming over to Eddie and me even before I turned my head and saw her. I could feel the sad mist. Then Madge told me what I needed to know. Told it to me straight about 3 types of cows and how I was in the least favorite category. Eddie, the dog. I was there, jeepers, it was awful. Audrey's eyes grew big, really big as Buster's eyes get whenever his slop pail is empty and he realizes there's nothing left to eat. At first, Audrey didn't say a thing. She was quiet as a windless night, and gosh, I got a little scared myself. I stood up on my hind legs so I could reach high enough to give Audrey a few licks on her chin. She likes that, and oh heck, it doesn't mean like boyfriend and girlfriend or anything, okay? It's just something I do to make her happy, in the same way that Audrey licks my face whenever Dad gives me a chewing out for making another mistake. But poor Audrey, she was not consoled. She said to me, "Oh, Eddie, what's going to happen to me? I don't want to be a food cow. Whatever will I do?" It made me want to howl, because I don't want Audrey to be a food cow either. She looked so sad, and I'm sure at that moment she was probably thinking she'd never get to France to taste all those delicious grasses and flowers. And that's when I told her not to worry. We'd figure something out. But there was no plan at that time, no siree, no plan at all. Roy, the horse. The plan? Whoa! Now hold on there, partner. You're jumping the story ahead of itself, putting the cart in front of the horse. Before you start chasing Audrey's tail, you might want to bide a moment and consider Janine, Audrey's mother. Janine is the key to this here adventure. It all started with her.